Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Podcast Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. My mom is demanding I pay my brother's medical bills. After that, am I the jerk for leaving the babies inside by themselves? And after that, parents tried to reconnect. I pretended not to recognize them. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen has to pay her own medical bills. Good thing we have insurance now, Reddit boy. Over $1,000 a month for the two of us. Don't you just love our healthcare system? So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. My mom is demanding I pay my brother's medical bills. My dad passed when I, 19 male, was 9. When I was 11, my mom married my stepdad. I have a brother, Chris, who's 14, who has extremely severe autism. He needs a lot of support with his everyday needs. He gets frustrated, and unfortunately, as he's got older, he started to lash out physically at the people around him. When I was little, I got on with my mom okay, but as a teenager, we had a lot of arguments. A lot of it had to do with my stepdad wanting to have the authority of a father over me, and me never really accepting that. But I also got pushed to the side a lot as all of the focus went on to looking after my brother, and that made me angry. I admit, I became a bit of a tearaway, drinking, not getting back until early hours of the morning. When I was 17, my mom sent me to one of those residential schools for troubled kids, literally like the crappy daytime TV shows, which I'm pretty sure where she got the idea. I had no idea it was going to happen, and the school sent 2 members of staff to get me out of bed in the middle of the night. I was there for 6 months. It was pretty horrible, like a military-style thing with morning inspections and sad middle-aged men in silly uniforms barking orders at us. I was allowed to call for my mom once a week after the first month, but I never even took them. She also wrote me a few letters, but I never read them. When I turned 18, they couldn't legally keep me there, and the plan was for my mom to come and pick me up, but I decided on my 18th birthday just to leave myself. The school threw an absolute fit, tried to call my mom, told me I was being irresponsible, but I told them to buzz off. It was a bit difficult because I didn't have any money or a phone, and the school was pretty rural, but I managed to borrow a phone and call a friend who came to pick me up. I moved around between friends for a bit, but I'm pretty well set up now. I blocked my mom on everything and pretty much made sure she couldn't get in touch with me. The other thing that happened when I turned 18 was that a fund my dad had set up for me when I was born became accessible. There's now a lot of money in it. I mean, a lot. My brother has a fund too, but I don't think anyone can get into it until he's 18. Recently, my step-aunt reached out to me out of the blue to say that my mom and stepdad have really been struggling financially with Chris's care costs, especially now that he's getting older and more difficult for mom to control. And she said my mom was sorry about the way things happened between us and wanted me to come home. I said I wasn't interested in being part of the family now just because she needs my money. My aunt said that was cruel and that I had only ever made things more difficult for my mom. I feel a bit guilty about Chris, especially because we used to be close and I was good at calming him down, but I've just had it with my mom. Am I the jerk? Don't ever send money. Don't ever do it. Once you do, these types of people will never stop coming after you. Your dad wanted you to have this, a way to take care of yourself, a path to freedom. Don't bend. Your brother has his own funds. It's time to take care of yourself. And I'm so sorry your mother sent you to a place like that. She tried to dismiss you as a person and a son because it was easier for her. You deserve better. Wishing you all the best as you pursue your best life. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. You've made your line in the sand pretty clear. I noticed that your step-aunt only reached out when your parents needed money, not when there was an angry, hurting teenager bouncing from friend to friend. You were a lot more vulnerable than they are. If you give up your money to help your brother, they won't repay it, as his needs will always be greater in their eyes. Use it to get set, get qualified, get a secure life. They will get his trust in 3 years and maybe be able to make a case to obtain early due to medical needs. Best thing you can do for your brother is to be secure in the future if and when he needs support as your parents age. You're not stable in your life yet. Also, get counseling or therapy. I know a Reddit cliche, but you've endured a lot. Working it through with someone impartial might help. Am I the jerk for leaving the babies inside by themselves? I, 20, am a mother of triplets whom are only 2 months old. I never expected in my life that I'd be a mother to triplets, So when I first became pregnant, it was definitely the last thing on my mind. I'm home with my babies all day long and had to even transfer my education to online. Sometimes I just need some fresh air, especially when I can't get them to stop crying and I find myself getting super frustrated to the point of tears. It's honestly so hard, and the dad isn't here to help as he's either at school or work. My fiance, who's 24, his parents rented us a main floor apartment, so when I step outside, I'm literally just sitting on the chair right beside the door. Plus, I have a baby monitor set up in their room, and it has a camera on it. I can literally see them and hear them, so if anything happened, I'd be able to quickly get to them. Being able to step outside for a few minutes to take a breather is really important to me because I start to have mini panic attacks when I can't get them to stop crying, and I get really frustrated because I just feel super overwhelmed. Being able to go outside just gives me a chance to calm down. My fiance came home to me sitting outside while the babies were crying and freaked out on me, calling me a horrible mom and a bunch of other names that I'm not going to list here. He thinks that I was being super neglectful and putting the babies in harm's way, and even told his parents, and now everyone seems to be really against me. I grew up in the system. My fiance's family is the only family I have and I've ever known, so it breaks my heart that they're so upset with me. But I really don't think I was doing anything wrong or putting my babies in harm's way, but they seem to think otherwise. So here I am, wondering if I should apologize for my actions or if I am the jerk in this situation. I decided to show my fiance this thread. At first, he was really upset with me for sharing our personal problems with strangers on the internet, even though it's anonymous. But in the end, when he had a chance to calm down and hear me and all of you guys out, he actually apologized and promised me he'd be more involved with parenting and even is willing to take parenting classes, which I'll hold him to that. I just want to thank everyone for the support that you've all given me. It's brought tears to my eyes seeing how supportive you all were to a stranger on the internet. I don't think I ever received this much support before. Not the jerk. When I had my baby, one of the things the nurses told me repeatedly while in the hospital and during the home visits is that if she's crying and I know she's been fed, she has a clean nappy on and she isn't sick, and I'm getting stressed out, it's okay to go outside for a few minutes to just collect myself. This advice was so important. It allowed me to do what I needed to do without feeling guilty, and those few minutes really do help in those times when they won't settle down. And I had one, let alone if I had three. Not the jerk. When the caregiver is overwhelmed, you need to step away for a few minutes to collect yourself and breathe. Center yourself, calm down, do what you need to do. You'd only be a jerk if you left them alone for long stretches of time, but it sounds like you only do it for short periods of time and you monitor them when you're doing so. Nothing wrong with that. What does your fiance do to help with the babies? The whole purpose of the baby monitor is so that you can leave the babies in a room on their own. Being just outside the apartment door is no big deal, says a grandmother. It sounds like you're overwhelmed. You need some help with the babies from time to time. Either the father needs to be home more or his family should help out. One baby is a lot. 3 have you completely outnumbered. Not the jerk. Parents tried to reconnect. I pretended not to recognize them. I was raised mostly by my uncle and aunt. My older sister developed a serious illness when I was 6, and my parents decided that they couldn't care for both of us, I guess. So they kind of unceremoniously dumped me at my grandparents, and my uncle took me in. Like, didn't even explain to me what was going on. Just, you're going to go visit Gran for a while, and never picked me back up. My grandparents and uncle explained it later, and they were pretty livid at my parents. I've seen my parents maybe 5 times since then, and not at all for the last 9 years. I decided to stop having contact with them when I was 12, and since I was the only one reaching out, all communication broke down. It turned out okay. I love my aunt and uncle, and it turns out they can't have kids, so they've always said I'm their miracle kid. I was just misrouted by the stork at first. I was formally adopted by them when I turned 18. I wish it had been earlier, but there were some red tape things that would have made that really expensive and difficult. I'm 21 now. My sister passed between Thanksgiving and Christmas, and I made a trip back from school for the funeral. But I stayed in the back and left before my biological parents could talk to me. They called my uncle to try to talk to me, but I said I didn't want to, so he told them that I wasn't available at the moment. They finally caught up to me over Christmas when I went to midnight mass with my gran and approached me and tried to give me a hug. I did recognize them, but I pretended not to and just backed off and said, "Sorry, do I know you?" They said, "We're your parents." And I said, "My parents are at home." and went and sat down with my gran. They sat behind us and I could just feel the stare, and on the way out they were like, "You really don't recognize us?" And I said, "Oh, are you my dad's brother? I think I remember you from when I was little." My gran thinks they deserved it by trying to come back to me like nothing had happened, but they wrote me a long letter about how hurt they are and how I should understand that they were trying to do the right thing and how they'll always be my parents and I can't change that. Other family members think I was too harsh as they're grieving, but I don't think they should get a pass just because they remembered me now that my sister is gone. Not the jerk. This was very petty, so much deserved, and I'm applauding you all the way for it. I'm glad that you ended up with parents who love and cherish you. Also, you were adopted, so they aren't your parents. Notice how in their letter they only focused on themselves, how hurt they were. Then they had the audacity to tell you how you should feel. These people are garbage and deserve to know and be told repeatedly that they're garbage. Not the jerk. Rinse and repeat. Am I the jerk for being brutally honest with my friend before her wedding? My best friend for the last 10 years is getting married in a few weeks. This past weekend was her bachelorette party. She got quite wasted, but I don't drink a lot, so I played it safer and stayed pretty coherent. At one point, she was in the bathroom throwing up and crying and looking through pictures of her ex on Instagram. All the other girls were comforting her and talking about what a jerk he is, etc. The next maybe hour turned into fixation on her ex, how they should have been the ones married, etc. Her ex recently had a baby with his new wife, so I understand it may have opened old wounds, but they split up 5 years ago. I'm also one of the few people who actually know why they split up, and all I can say is it was definitely her fault. After the hour, I tried to get us all out of the bathroom and continue the night. The next morning, things seemed fine, but then my friend was going through her phone and saw she had called her ex 10 plus times. She freaked out, but the calls were all so short, we assumed he didn't pick up. I told her she needed to delete his number from her phone and move on because it wasn't fair to the guy she's marrying if she continues to be hung up on her ex. Everyone got really upset with me for being insensitive, and I was made to feel like it was my fault for letting her call him. Eventually, my friend asked me to go home early. I learned from one of the other bridesmaids that they spent the rest of the morning bashing me in addition to the ex. I was told part of a bachelorette party is getting closure with old relationships, and my judgmental attitude ruined it for the bride-to-be. I talked to my sister about it, and she said while my friend was being ridiculous, that it's my job to put aside my feelings for the bride as maid of honor. We are all in our 30s though, and this seems very odd to me. Am I the jerk? Update. Wow, so many comments. Thank you for all of your judgments. I just want to put this here, as a lot of people keep saying I should tell her fiancé. In any normal situation, I would agree, but in this case, she's been asked in the past to choose between him and her ex. She chose her ex. She made it clear to her now fiancé she would rather be with her ex. But her ex said he didn't want her and left, so she stayed with her now fiancé. He knows on some level. Telling him wouldn't be a big revelation and likely wouldn't make him end the wedding. It would just make him sad and rub his nose in something that he is aware of. Not the jerk. I'll never understand these friend groups that never tell each other the real truth. She doesn't sound like much of a friend, to be honest. Plus, I thought the point of a bachelorette party was one last night out as an unmarried woman, not spending the night wishing I was marrying my ex. The fact is, I feel bad for the groom because he's obviously second choice and he'll probably end up getting treated like crap. Clearly not the jerk here. You did nothing wrong in telling your friend to respect their partner and delete their ex's number. The group sounds problematic, and I hope you don't hold yourself in bad esteem because of their behavior. Not the jerk. What? It's your fault that she's hung up on her ex? That I'm assuming she cheated on and drunkenly dialed him 10 times after crying on the floor for hours? You're right, she should delete his number and be fair to the guy she's marrying. And how in the world is it your fault? Could you have taken her phone? Imagine that scene. Did you dial him? No. She's a victim. She will always be a victim. Nothing will ever be her fault. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or the bride? Please let us know. Never marry someone if you know that you're their second choice and they'd rather be with someone else than you. This dude is totally just setting himself up for failure. How long do you think it'll be before she cheats on him, if she isn't already? Have a party on my birthday? Then we will drink all your beer. This happened in the late 80s when I was in college. I went to UConn, University of Connecticut. In my sophomore year, I was assigned to a room in a quad. During the 80s, the school ran out of dorm rooms, so they converted study rooms into dorms. These were deemed quads, so 4 students roomed there. My 3 roommates were seniors, all graduating. Since I was the owner of the room, UConn had an elaborate system to assign rooms. 3 friends approached me to be the 4th, so as to guarantee the room for the next year. I am pretty easygoing, so I said yes. This was a big mistake, since I found out that I'm not compatible with others and we constantly butted heads. One example. One of the roommates volunteered to bring their record player for the room, but then didn't allow me to play my records on it because it was the devil's music. For the record, I had Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, that kind of stuff. And no, this person was not religious, he was just being a jerk. The list of complaints could go on, but it all came to a head on my birthday. Weeks before my birthday, I informed my mates that I was throwing a party on my birthday and would like to have a party in the room. This was not unusual. There had been parties here before, thrown by one or the others. This was my first request for the room. The others said fine, and I started to invite my friends. I planned about 10 people. A few days before my birthday, all 3 came to me to tell me that they were going to throw a huge party on my birthday. When I protested, they said my friends could come as well, but the cover charge was $5. I pushed back, saying that I was buying my own supplies, so my friends shouldn't have to pay. They agreed. Later, I find that they invited a lot of people, and I wasn't going to even see my friends, let alone celebrate with them. The night of the party, my roommates tell me to have my friends identify themselves so they won't get charged. This is where the malicious compliance comes in. I was really upset that these guys were doing this, so I went down to the ground floor of our dorm and told anyone coming to the party that if you told the person taking money that you were there for my party, you wouldn't be charged. You can probably guess the rest. The party was a huge success. All the beer drunk, roommates out all their money. I have some sort of satisfaction. Guess you shouldn't have scheduled the party on my birthday. Only bummer was that I really didn't get to hang out with my friends because it was way too crowded. Before anyone questions, how did just about everyone get in for free without my roommates figuring it out? 1. People were coming in staggered, so 50 people didn't all just show up at the same time to make it obvious. And 2. All 3 were collecting the money at various times, so they didn't know that everyone was claiming to be there for my party until the end when they pooled their money. Call me crazy, but I just never understood the appeal of partying. I'd rather get pizza and watch movies with Reddit Boy any night than, drink a lot and be around a bunch of people I don't know and stuff. Am I the jerk for disinviting my late wife's kids from my wedding? About a year ago, my wife, Anna, 60 female, of 25 years passed, 8 months after being diagnosed with cancer. Besides our 25-year-old son, Andrew, she also had 3 other kids, Allison, who's 42, Barbara, who's 40, and Caleb, who's 39, from a prior marriage. Their father was never really around, so I, 52, male, have raised them basically as my own ever since I married their mom. Anna's cancer was very difficult for me financially, and I wound up having to downgrade my car to pay for her medical bills and make withdrawals for my 401k and take on a lot of debt. Shortly after Anna passed, I met another woman, Beth, who's 49, who I have since married. Given that we're living together in Beth's house, selling Anna's house made a lot of sense. When we were packing up the house, I asked Anna's kids if they wanted anything, and they said they didn't. I invested a large amount of money renovating the house and getting it ready to sell, and eventually found a house flipping company that would take it on. On the day of the closing, I was surprised to find out that Allison had sent an email to the lending company telling them that she had been reading up on state law, and that since Anna's kids weren't mine, they were entitled to the portion she would have gotten from the sale. Turns out she was right. I feel like Anna's kids deliberately chose to kneecap me, but they're insistent that Allison didn't know what was going on and was just asking questions. I should have been able to take the money Anna and I had saved up and start a new life, but now I'm probably going to have to sell the new motorcycle I just bought and have long wanted, and I'm not going to be able to get myself out of debt. This was supposed to be a fresh start for me, and now I'm stuck with the same old problems I've always had. The day of the eventual closing, I was still extremely upset, so when I woke up for work, I texted Allison, Barbara, and Caleb and let them know that I'd also been doing my own reading about our state's laws, and it turned out I'm not actually their father, and they should work on their relationship with the person who actually is. I also told them that they were no longer welcome at my wedding, which was the next weekend. Upon finding out that I had said that, Andrew was extremely upset with me. We met for lunch the following day, and I asked him to be my best man, but he told me that unless I apologized to his siblings, he didn't want to attend my wedding. I was hoping he'd get over it, but he hasn't talked to me since, saying that he's too old to be a 25-year-old child of divorce, and that he was offended that I got married the weekend after the anniversary of his mom's funeral. To me, that date isn't particularly meaningful since the date that weighs on my heart is the one that she actually passed. Beth thinks I should just swallow my pride and apologize so that Andrew will talk to me again, but I just can't help but feel like I got done over. Wow, you're the jerk a million times over. You are so petty for telling them you aren't their father anymore when you raised them. They were entitled to that money just as you are, and it doesn't sound like they tried to do it maliciously. Nice job ruining those relationships for the rest of your life. I hope you come to thoroughly regret it. He's also only 10 years older than the oldest kid. They deliberately, even though they deny it, allowed him to pour money into renovations and they benefited from. OP was justifiably hurt. These aren't little kids or even young adults. They're in their 40s and they know what they're doing. The only person who's justifiably hurt is OP and his son. Alternatively, OP knew that the kids were legally entitled to Anna's part of the estate. He hoped to pull a fast one on them and is now mad that they knew the law. You can't say that's common knowledge, and the only way they had a legal handle at all was by exploiting the fact that he isn't biologically their father. He should take them to court for half the renovation costs. Are you kidding me? You basically tried to disinherit your deceased wife's kids and then want to know if you're the jerk for disinviting them to a wedding and telling the kids that you raised that you aren't their real father. Yes, you're the jerk, but you're the even bigger jerk for trying to disinherit them. Do you actually think that's what your late wife would have wanted? You're the jerk. You're the jerk. First, you totally ignored the fact that Anna's kids would be entitled to an inheritance from their mother. Second, you had a petulant toddler tantrum over having to sell your motorbike, which was an unwise purchase because you had to know about number one. Third, you retaliated against your stepkids for whom you were the sole father figure by hurting their feelings and basically disowning them because they had the nerve to want the inheritance from their mother, to which they were clearly entitled. I get that you went through a very difficult time, but so did your kids. All of them. It's not just the OP show. No wonder your biological son is so angry. Am I the jerk for buying my daughter her own Nintendo Switch after her older step-siblings refused to let her play? My wife has a son who's 12 and a daughter who's 14. They are not biologically my kids. Our daughter is 7, however. For Christmas, we bought them the Switch. To be clear, it was for all three and they opened it together. This was their first gaming console. All the games we purchased had multiplayer function. We also gave each kid their own controller. Christmas Day, things were fine. They all played together for hours. The day after, life resumed. My wife flew out to her dad's for his surgery. As I went to work each day, both older kids were to keep an eye out for the youngest during the remainder of Christmas break. I'd come home from work to find the two playing while the youngest sat quietly, obviously upset though. I'd ask, why isn't the youngest playing as well? I'd get responses like, in a minute, or this level is too hard for her. Most of the time, they'd give me a bunch of hot air without a definite reason. One evening, a huge fight broke out after the two paused the game and walked away. The youngest determined it was finally her turn. When they found out, all heck broke loose. I took the console away the next day. I told them that they could have it back when they agreed to let their sister play. Several days later, I come home and find the youngest in her room crying. They made her do all of their chores. In return, she would be given 15 minutes to play the game. Only they didn't hold up their end of the deal after she completed the chores. I discovered this wasn't an isolated incident. They've been bossing her around every day and using the console to manipulate her. I was livid. This was a gift intended for everyone. She shouldn't have to earn her time to play and then be given a ridiculous time restraint. I took the console away completely, but realized later this wasn't fair for the youngest who did nothing wrong. I decided to buy her a system just for her. I saw this being the only fix to eliminate the problem. The older kids got their system back, and I explained that their sister now has her own. Everyone seemed fine. Things, in my opinion, worked out great. That was until my wife returned home. The older kids told her how I've shown obvious favoritism for the youngest. They don't think it's fair the youngest gets to have a console to herself and in her bedroom. Their console has been in the living room since Christmas morning. They argued they should each have their own consoles so that they can play them in their separate rooms too. To be clear, the youngest needs her system in her room, or it would defeat the purpose of buying another one since the other kids use the living room TV. Even after explaining to my wife what had happened, she agreed it was a form of favoritism and that I should have made the rule all three can play or none at all. Like as if they'd actually obey that rule when I wasn't home. Currently, they're barely speaking to me and said to fix things I should buy a third console. I'm kicking myself for buying the first one. ETA. I'm not sure why so many are baffled over the fact that the older kids were asked to keep an eye out for the youngest. That simply meant, as they know, call if there's a problem and I'll be right there. They were not expected or asked to do a single thing for their sibling other than picking up the phone and calling me. Not the jerk. Your stepkids are bullying your daughter. You took action to rectify that and did so in a very fair way. They wanted that console for themselves. Well, they got it. And now their younger sister has her own console. As for your wife, she's turning a blind eye to her kids' bullying behavior, and her kids clearly have her numbered. They are manipulating her with their ridiculous claims of favoritism. If anyone is showing favoritism, it's her when she chooses to excuse their bad behavior towards your daughter. The idea that you should have to reward your stepkids for their bullying by buying yet another console is absolutely ridiculous. Tell her to buy it herself if she really thinks they deserve to be rewarded for their bad behavior. I applaud you for standing up for your kid and not allowing her to be bullied. I recommend family counseling because it sounds like this issue goes deeper than a console. Your wife does not want to see or admit to her kid's behavior. Not the jerk, but you need a better childcare situation. Clearly, the older ones are not capable of watching your youngest and probably resent her for the added responsibility. Why don't you sit down with your wife and discuss what she thinks fair looks like for all three of them? Then have that same discussion with your kids. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. Is it like a common thing nowadays for parents to not be able to control their kids? I don't even want to think of what my parents would have done if I had tried to pull this when I was a kid. Am I the jerk for giving one daughter more inheritance? My husband and I have two daughters. Let's call them Emma, who's 32, and Sam, who's 29. My husband passed of a stroke 2 years ago, and he left everything to me. I'm rewriting my will as well in case something happens to me. Originally, everything was split 50-50 between the girls, but now I'm splitting about 80-20 in favor of Emma. Emma has ADHD and isn't doing great in life. In those days, everyone just assumed she was lazy and she didn't get the help children today get until she was in her teens. She just managed to finish high school and is working at a retail store as a stalker. It's backbreaking and she doesn't have much in the way of savings or anything. Her car was her father's when he passed. Sam is working in tech as a project manager and her husband is a doctor. They live in a $1 million house and have 2 kids. I'm not worried about Sam. She's always been very capable and excelled at everything. She was always the overachiever, and I don't think she needs help financially. Her and her husband probably take home $500,000 a year after taxes. I want Emma to inherit the house and car when I pass. I think it will be good for her because she can live in it or sell it and buy another one. Sam will be fine, and her husband have several houses and a summer home. But Sam is angry with me because I've made it clear that Emma gets most of our belongings. The bank savings and stocks will go to Sam, but if I live to my 80s, she won't have too much, probably 20 to 30% of what the house is worth. But I think it's fair because she's doing much better. Sam called me to yell at me, saying I'm favoring Emma. I reminded her of how much worse off Emma is than her, but she said they were both my daughters and they should both get 50-50 or it's favoritism. She reminded me that growing up, we always spent more on Emma than her, but that's because she was at the top of her class while Emma was failing. I put Emma in extra tutoring because she needed it more. She said I should will half of the inheritance to her kids for college funds, but I reminded her she makes more and can save for them. I told her it's not about me favoring Emma over her, but Emma is worse off, and she will be fine, which has resulted in her hanging up and refusing to come over for Christmas. It's your estate to do with what you want, but don't assume that just because 2 adult daughters are at one place in life now, they won't be in different positions later. Also, will one daughter be an executor, have power of attorney, be involved in future elder care? If so, does your split of assets align with which daughter you'd want in those roles? Oh yeah, forget about power of attorney. Bet she wants Sam to look after her medical and financial future because Sam is better with money, but she has shown favoritism to Emma. She might regret that when Sam pops her in the cheapest care home in Alaska to keep her 20% bigger. Well, what do you think? Should OP split it 50-50 or not? Please let us know. I mean, 80-20 makes sense to me, but you know how these Reddit people are. Favoritism this, favoritism that. Customer completely ignored my existence and made my job more difficult. This happened the day after New Year's. For some unknown reason, we got slammed, pretty much equivalent to before Thanksgiving. Endless lines, customers needing help on the floor constantly, etc. I was cashiering, which I hate doing as it is, but this rush was just stressing me out. 1 hour felt like 5. I couldn't even take a drink of water. I'm not one of those people that gets ticked off if someone is on their phone or not being chatty. I don't care. All I ask is that if you're checking out, then be checking out. Don't have me start and then realize you have other shopping to do and be gone forever. And don't be so wrapped up in your phone call that you're not paying attention and I have to interrupt you. So I had a customer. She ran into someone she knew the next line over. I could hear them talking when I was ringing the customer ahead of her. I finally get to her. She doesn't move. She's so wrapped up in her conversation, she doesn't even acknowledge it's her turn. Other customers are looking back and forth at them. It wasn't like I could just take the customer behind her because our lanes are narrow. So I walk out and grab her cart. We unload the carts. A minute or two later, she takes the 2 steps forward. I say hello to be polite. Her and her friend are still lost in conversation. She either didn't want to hear me or ignore me. Whatever. Other people are still looking back and forth between them with a look of, seriously? Now, while I was emptying her cart, I noticed she had reusable bags. I already started bagging her stuff in paper and thought, well, it wasn't important enough for her to pause her conversation for 2 seconds and tell me. Too bad, she gets our bags now. I finally finish and tell her her total. She looks at me confused and says, "What?" So I repeat it. She puts her card in and returns to talking. She's so oblivious that she doesn't hear the card reader going off telling her to remove her card. I tell her and she says, "Oh." Finally, put her bagged groceries in her cart and give her receipt and assume she'll move. Nope. She stands there and keeps talking to her friend, getting in other customers' way. Then her friend finishes and they stand in the walkway talking, getting in everyone's way. Someone later told me that 2 people were blocking the door. I assumed it was her. Usually stuff like this doesn't get to me, but it's like, how self-absorbed can you be? It's annoying when people block aisles because they're talking. This was like a whole new level. Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video. Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.